Hey, it's Miss Phelps, and tonight we're going to be talking about transversals. Now, some of you have already gotten this lesson in class, so part of it may be new to you, and part of it you may have already taken care of. So that's great. Just forward ahead if you need to. Okay, so unfortunately there's a lot of vocabulary that goes along with transversals, so I want to start with basically just some definitions so you know what we're doing. Alright, the first one is a transversal, and it is a line or line segment that intersects two coplanar lines at two different points. Now, normally it'll be parallel lines for most of the things we do, but it's not always a parallel line, so don't think that a transversal can only cross a set of parallel lines. The next one is obviously parallel lines, and that they are two lines in the same plane that never intersect. Okay, that's an old definition. You should know that one by now. Alright, the next one is alternate interior. Alternate interior are angles on different sides of the transversal inside the parallel lines. So if you have a set of parallel lines like this inside part is what they call the interior. And if you've got your transversal, one's going to be on the left and one will be on the right side of it. Alternate exterior angles are angles on different sides of the transversal, but they're outside the parallel lines. So they would be like above and below the lines on opposite sides of the transversal. I'm going to show you a picture of that on the next slide so that you kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Alright. Consecutive interior are angles on the same side of the transversal inside the parallel lines. So you've got your transversal cutting across, and they're going to both be on the inside on the same side of that line. The next one is consecutive exterior, and they are angles on the same side of the transversal outside the parallel lines. Now, consecutive, hopefully you know, consecutive means that they are like one right after the other, so that would mean that they're going to be on the same side right next to each other. Alright, the next word is corresponding angles, and they are angles in the same position of the transversal on both parallel lines, and I'll show you some examples of that in just a minute, because it's really important that you get corresponding. That's a big one. Alright, the next one, oops, hold on, let me move it down a little for you, is vertical angles. And vertical angles are non-adjacent angles directly across from each other. So if you have a cross like this, it would be one on top and one on the bottom, or one to the left and one to the right. And then you've got adjacent angles, which again is one that hopefully you know by now. Adjacent angles share a common ray. So they're basically neighbors. They're side by side. So if I had, like, this was my angle, my two angles, there's one and here's one. Well, they're sharing this common ray here. So that means that they are adjacent. Alright, so now let's go to the next slide so that you can actually see what some of these things look like. Okay, so I've got angles 1, 2, 3, and 4, which I'll just move around a little bit because I forgot to do that a while ago. And then they are going to go with, we're going to see how they relate to 10, 11, 12, and 13. Alright, I figured I'd give you a couple of numbers that were a little different from earlier today. That way you could kind of get an idea. Now, as we were saying earlier, if you've got adjacent are side by side. So 1 and 2 would be adjacent, but also 1 and 3 would be adjacent. As long as they're sharing a ray, they can be adjacent. Alright, vertical angles would be like 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, because they're going to be opposite each other. Alright? Okay, then you have corresponding. Now, corresponding is in the same position. So if you notice, angle 1 is in the top left corner, and down here, angle 10 is also in the top left corner of the transversal. Alright, so I'm actually going to do a little bit of practice with you to get you started, and let's just see how that goes. Alright, so I got a couple of questions here for you, and we're just going to sort of go through these and kind of give you an idea of what you can be looking for. The first one says, which angles are adjacent to angle 3? Well, remember, adjacent means that they are side by side. So angle 1 would be adjacent to 3, and angle 4 would also be adjacent to 3. The other question says, which angle is alternate exterior to angle 1? Well, let's think about what the words mean. Alternate means across from each other, so they're not on the same side of the transversal, and exterior means they're on the outside of the parallel line, so it would be either above or below it. So that would have to be, if it's alternate exterior to 1, then it would have to be 13. Okay? Alright, this time I'm going to give you a minute and see how you do. It says which angle is corresponding to 13, and the other question says which angle is a consecutive exterior to angle 2. Alright, so if you need to, go back and look at your notes to get this. Alright, corresponding to angle 13. Now angle 13 is on the bottom right side. So when I go up to this set, the bottom right side is going to be angle 4. And then the other question says which angle is consecutive exterior to angle 2? Well, consecutive means on the same side, and exterior means on the outside. So the only other one on the outside on the same side as angle 2 would have to be angle 13. Alright, so there we've got 4 and 13. The next question says, which angle is consecutive interior to angle 10? Again, you've got to know what that vocabulary means. Consecutive is inside, and consecutive means next to, and interior means on the inside of the parallel lines. So I've got angle 10 here, and the one that's going to be on the inside on the same side, you should have picked angle 3. Alright, the next question says, are angles 10 and 4 congruent or supplementary? Okay, so I'll look up there. 10 is an obtuse angle, and 4 is also an obtuse angle. And the great thing about transversals, they're either going to be, the angles around them are either going to be congruent or they're going to be supplementary. So you don't have like 4 or 5 choices. It's either one or the other. So since they are both obtuse, I know that they both must be congruent. Alright, the next question. Let me scoot up just a little bit. Alright, the next question says, which angle is alternate interior to angle 4? Well, alternate interior, alternate means on the opposite side, and interior means on the inside. So the alternate interior for 4 would be 10. Alright, there's only a couple more, so just hang with me a little bit longer. Angles 11 and angle 4. Okay, oops, I already let you see that one. Alright, 11 and 4. If you notice, 11 is acute and angle 4 is obtuse. So since they're not the same, then they must be supplementary. Alright, next one says which angle is vertical to angle 2? Remember what vertical means. It's the opposite. So the one straight across from 2 should be, you guessed it, it should be 3. Alright, the next question says, are angles 10 and 11 congruent or supplementary? Look at your angles. Do they even look the same? No, not really. One is acute and one is obtuse. So since they're not congruent or the same, they have to be supplementary. Alright, that actually is all the notes. I know it was plenty, but hopefully you already had the first page and you won't have to do any more as far as that goes. And